Hi there, this is Devin Hunter, host of the Modern Witch Podcast, and I'm here to talk about spells. Well, specifically, I'm here to talk about curses. Alright, so curses are something that are a part of witchcraft, and a lot of witches kind of shy away from until they are in desperate need or they're super angry or something like that. As much as I'm not a fan of curses, I'm not somebody who curses lightly, we'll put it that way, there come up a lot of questions when we start talking about the topic of curses. First thing is ethics. For me, ethics are relative. I'm not a fan of the threefold law. It never really applied to me. I've done lots of magic and cast lots of spells, and I've never had any sort of threefold interaction. A lot of witches say that they do. I think that's probably because they're actually weaving that into the spell. But if you're somebody who doesn't believe in a threefold law, it's not going to be part of your magic, and it's not going to come back to you in that kind of way. Karma is a totally different thing, and is a word that we often misuse in modern witchcraft. Karma is more about your life story and your life message and your life's work. It's not the little monkey that sits on your shoulder and spanks you in the ass every time you screw up. Okay, so there's a lot of types of curses out there, and we don't have time to talk about all of them in this one video. But I am going to talk about the 3 most common curses that we will experience personally. So before we get into the different types of curses, let's talk about how you can tell if you've actually been cursed. There are a couple of warning signs that are definite red flags when it comes to the question, have I been cursed or have I not been cursed? So the first thing we want to talk about is your mood. If you find yourself depressed, if you find yourself very anxious, or even angry, and it all just kind of happened one day and you're having a hard time getting out of the funk, that is one of the indicators that yes, there's some sort of magic at play, or at least energy at play. Another thing is that everything kind of goes to crap, meaning that everything's great one day, you've got a great job, you're able to pay all your bills, and then something happens and everything just kind of stops. Or if you're creative type, you feel completely blocked. Those are all signs that you could be cursed. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is paranoia. And when we talk about curses, we have to talk about paranoia because there's a lot of people who feel they're cursed or wonder if they're cursed, and it's the exact opposite. Maybe they trip themselves up. And even though there is a type of curse, which we will talk about, that often comes with paranoia and often comes with sleeplessness and things like that, for the most part, if you're paranoid about something, I would always say, talk to a professional, talk to another witch, or talk to somebody who actually can take a look into whether or not you've been cursed. Overly paranoia, that's a big thing, and there's a lot of that. And I can't tell you how many times I'm on the phone with somebody and I'm talking to them, doing a reading, and they're asking me, am I cursed? And they start talking about all the ways that paranoia has kind of slipped into their life. And most of the time, this is not the case. There's some sort of mental illness or something else at play. So just because you're having sleeplessness, just because you're depressed, just because you found yourself be a little paranoia, or even that, one day everything went to crap, it doesn't actually mean that you've been cursed. Sometimes that's just the way things go, and sometimes that's just life. The first thing is a familial curse. And a familial curse is a curse that's been placed on a family. There's a lot of ways that this can happen. First of all, and most often what it is that a member of your family a few generations back did something really bad. And it basically, the energy of that moment, whether there was a murderer or a rapist or alcoholism, any of those types of things that could cause a majorly negative impact on the life in the family, those things can be passed down generation to generation. A lot of the time, some of them will say the more negative spiritual frequencies tune into people who are in those kinds of states, whether it is that they're drug addicts or alcoholics, or that they were not a nice person. Negative energies tend to collect around those people. So, that being the case, one of the things that we look at when we're talking about familial curses is, what was going on in your family a few generations ago? Was there any cause for it? There are curses that can be placed externally, and those are the types of curses that, when we talk about familial curses, where you're looking at somebody who is hired to curse your family generations down the road. And most of these curses last about 7 generations. So that being the case, you're definitely going to want to get a couple of opinions as to, is there a family curse or is there not a family curse? If you're somebody who believes because your mother told you or your grandmother told you that your family is cursed, that's a pretty good indicator that you might want to check that out, especially if you feel that it's starting to manifest in your life right now. The ways that we would take care of this when it comes to familial curses, because of the way that the energy actually spreads itself out over the course of several generations, is that we have to take it really slow and it's something that really has to be done by you. You can get a professional to come in, take a look at things, but you're going to have to be part of the magic, just like pretty much with any type of curse removal, but especially for the ones that are familial curses. We take a look at 7 generations behind you and the future 7 generations that are to come, and make sure that everything looks squeaky clean. And if there isn't, that we're able to kind of look at where that negative energy is coming from, that lower frequency stuff, and how we're going to take care of it. A lot of the times this is done through shamanic work, or some sort of journeying and dreaming, so you can go get that information and bring it back. If you're hiring a professional witch or a practitioner of any sort of magic to take care of the familial curse, chances are they have their own way of doing things. However, in general, if you're trying to tackle this on your own, one of the best things to do is to look at a 13-night uncrossing. And a 13-night uncrossing is something that, well, it's usually a system of baths that you take over 13 nights using an uncrossing product. We sell them at our store. Many different hoodoo shops sell them in their stores as well. Or you can just go to curse removal bath stuff, and you want to do that over the course of 13 nights. The second type of curse I want to talk to you about is what we call an indirect curse. And these are the ones that are the most common. And what I mean by indirect are that they're usually kind of done in the moment. We call them like the evil eye a good one, or a crossing is a good one. In the case of the evil eye, what we're looking at is somebody who covets what you have. And so a lot of the fear when we get something new, like a new car or a new baby, is that somebody's going to come over and they're going to covet what it is that you have. And by that coveting, they're basically sending you a negative thought form, and you can absorb that and it can totally trip you up. One of the ways that we talk about a crossing, or when somebody is crossed, is that you're putting energy out into the universe and then something comes along and crosses that, meaning that it's making it less likely for what you're trying to manifest or what you're trying to do to actually come to fruition. It's kind of like having traffic on the highway. So these curses are super easy to take care of. Most of the time it's a one-shot thing. I recommend a cleansing candle. Or some sort of uncrossing that can be done within 3 days at the most. These are things that require a lot of personal awareness, especially because most of these curses we cast on ourselves. And yes, it's absolutely possible to do that. In the last episode, I talked about resistance and the itty bitty shitty committee. That's a really great way if we're not seeking the path of least resistance and we're listening to the itty bitty shitty committee. That's a really great way that we can actually curse ourselves. It happens a lot more than we like to admit, and a lot of the problems that we have in those types of cases are when the inner turmoil actually builds up because it's being fed. We want to break that always. The third type of curse that I want to talk to you about is what we call a direct curse. And a direct curse is when you've actually had somebody who's a practitioner of some sort of magic actually send you negative energy. And these are the stickiest and often the most hard to actually take care of. And the reason being is that every witch or every practitioner has very specific spirits that they work with and very specific modalities in their magic. And because of this, it can make it very, very difficult. Now, for me, curses are something that I do not do for other people. You can't hire me to curse anybody for you because I have a very high standard when it comes to the way that that's going to actually unfold in my life. I don't really want to dig into that energy more than I have to when I'm taking care of it for other people, meaning curse removals and things like that. But in my personal life, curses have had to come up, and I'm actually going to include in the later part of this video a very short curse that me and my partners did on a rapist. Because to me, we have an obligation as magical practitioners and as people who work with energy to take on some of the bigger bad things in life. And because we do have pointy energy, meaning that we can send it out there and we can actually have some major cause and effect play out, I think it's important to throw as many roadblocks in the way of murderers and rapists and child molesters as we possibly can. So for me, if I'm going to curse somebody, chances are that's what's going on. They're a murderer, they're a rapist, or a child molester, any of those things that we can consider to be crimes against humanity. Those are the people who I tend to direct that type of energy to. So, if you're somebody who feels like you've been cursed by a witch or by another practitioner, there are a couple of things that you can do. And one of the first things that I always recommend is get a second opinion, meaning just make sure that it's being confirmed on multiple levels that yes, you have been cursed. If you have been cursed, talk to a couple of friends. So these types of curses require another practitioner to remove them. If you are somebody who feels this has happened to you and you aren't a practitioner or you don't know any other practitioners, then what I recommend doing is go and finding a professional, whether it's a psychic or a witch or a professional warlock or any of those other things. You want to be looking at somebody who's sensitive to the energy, who can actually tell you, again, have I been cursed or have I not been cursed? Those people also have tricks up their sleeves. They've been doing it for a while, and they will be able to navigate the waters of that curse much more effectively than you would be on your own. And this is why I recommend that if you are a witch and you feel you have been cursed, that you bring your friends in and you make this a team effort when it comes to the clearing of that energy. There are a couple ways that you can do it. You can do a removal, which is what I most recommend, which is when you're going through, you're figuring out where the energy is coming from, how it got to you, how it's playing out. Sometimes, especially with curses, a lot of the way that they work is to keep us distracted from what's actually going on. If that is the case, then you want to make sure you're taking a very broad look at your life and at the people in your life, because most often the curses and those types of energy are coming from people who are a lot closer to us than we like to think. You can do a reversal, which is where you take the energy that's been sent to you and you send it back to the sender. Now, this is a great way of doing it, and you're often going to want to have a double-headed candle, meaning that it's two colors. Black and red are the colors that we often work with for this. Another great spell that comes from one of my favorite witches of all time, Dorothy Morrison, is the Swifting of Energy spell. And you can find that in her book, Utterly Wicked. I highly recommend it, especially when it comes to dealing with curses, because it takes the energy that's being sent to you, filters it through, and actually makes it something that is digestible for you. So that negative energy that's being sent to you is only going to propel you further in your endeavors. Again, you can do salt baths, uncrossing baths, or any sort of ritual bath. Should help take care of these things and will bring the causes and the way that those causes are actually affecting your life into your awareness, which is mostly half the battle. If you're going to do curse removal in this way, I recommend that you take care of it over the course of a moon phase. So going from full moon to the new moon. And it's going to take time, but those are the cleanest ways to take care of the energy. Otherwise, you're going to need to get a professional, like I said, who knows what they're doing and is able to look at you, diagnose all of those different aspects of it, and then charge forward. So, like I said, these are only 3 of the most common types of curses that we're going to come across as witches. Now, a type of curse that a lot of witches cast, and they don't know that it's an actual curse, is the binding spell. And a binding spell is a curse because what we're doing when we're casting this spell is actually making it very difficult for the person's will to actually manifest into the world. And so when we're taking care of people, so to speak, with a binding spell, then what we're doing is actually blocking them from being able to move forward and have an affect on their environment in the way that they're intending to have one now. Now, like I said, I differ than a lot of witches because I don't follow the threefold law. I've never had it been an issue for me, and it's not something that I've added into my magic, at least not since I was younger. That law is totally up to tradition, and some witches adhere to that, and that's the way that their magic is going to filter through into their life. So if we're casting a spell like a binding spell, when is it appropriate? When is it not appropriate? That's totally up to you and your own values and your own ethics. Again, like I said, I reserve that type of spell work for rapists, child molesters, and murderers. And so recently I had the sad opportunity to actually move forward and cast a binding spell or a binding curse on Roosh V, who is the internet pickup artist, self-proclaimed guru of sex. This man has said in his own words that he's raped multiple women, women who were drunk, women who told him no on multiple occasions. He follows them home anyway. All of this information is available on his website. And he recently has tried to create some organizations and groups all over the United States, Canada, the UK, and other parts of the world to support the idea of legalizing rape as long as it's done on private property, which completely devastates me and the people who I know who have been affected by rape. So we took it upon ourselves, and I know a lot of witches are doing the same, to actually bind this man so that his influence can no longer seep out into the rest of the world like the cancer that it is. Anybody who promotes rape deserves to be bound. It's just as simple as that. So this man was doing some things that were not so good, and so we took it upon ourselves to do that binding. And because spell work and real magic is something that we don't often see a lot, especially on YouTube, I thought I would share a small part of that with you. Now, keep in mind, we kind of whipped up the spell pretty quickly. So if you will see me with my cell phone out kind of looking at the notes from it, and so I could recite the spell in the right way. So forgive me that. However, we do feel that it was quite effective, and moments after we cast this spell and we posted it on Facebook and Twitter, we had a lot of response that was quite positive. A lot of people joined us, and we even had anonymous retweet it on Twitter. So to me, that's a good confirmation that this thing worked. Now, the reason why I posted it on social media was that I worked it into the spell, and with our intention that every single time somebody saw the picture or saw the video, that the spell was almost recast again, so that it would be very, very difficult for him to have somebody remove the curse for him, unless it was me or my partners. So, that being the case, we're not going to be doing that. So the guy's going to be cursed forever, and that's what he gets for being a rapist.
I bind your sight and your tongue. I bind your mind and the shit you flung. Men with your ego are the worst kind. From the spell, no peace you'll find. Crimes against women are crimes against humanity. I bind your sight and your tongue. I bind your mind and the shit you flung. Men with your ego are the worst kind. From this spell, no peace you'll find. So must it be.
So must it be.
All right. Thank you for joining me for this video. I understand that it's a difficult topic for some, and it's probably controversial, but for me, I think that it's very important to share all of the aspects of witchcraft that we come across and that we perform, and also share with you what my ethics are and how I tend to look at spellcasting and magic. In the case of our binding spell, once again, I feel very, very perfectly comfortable with that spell and it being out there in the world. I'm quite proud of it, actually, and it's something that I think was needed. So there's your answer to that. I hope that you'll come back next week when we'll have another episode and we'll be exploring a different type of magic. And in the meantime, check me out on Facebook and Twitter at Mr. Devin Hunter. You can also find me at modernwitchonline.com or by going to devinhunter.net. Once again, I'm Devin, and I will see you next week.